Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel and welcome back to my skinny series. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking all about soda. If you guys are new to my channel, hello and welcome. My name is Becca and I have lots of skinny videos here on my channel where basically I just pick a certain food product. It's usually all things that you guys request. And we just go through and we analyze it from a nutritional standpoint. I go over the nutrition facts as well as the ingredient list, and we just kind of go through and figure out if it's a good product, a bad product, or things you want to look out for if you are buying one of these products. So today I'm going to be talking about dear old soda. Here in America, we sure do love our sugary beverages, so this is going to be a fun one. I did just want to say before I dive in, this is just going to be strictly on regular soda, no diet soda. I'm going to do a whole separate video on diet soda as well, because I think it would just be a lot to go over both. You guys know that I tend to get a little chatty in these videos, so I figured I would split them up into two. Okay, so before we dive into soda itself, let's just talk about really quickly sweetened beverages in general and why they are really not so great. So when I say sweetened beverages, I'm talking about soda, I'm talking about sugary coffee drinks, I'm talking about sweetened energy drinks, I'm talking about sweetened tea, and of course juice as well. Juice is probably the least offensive of all of those. I did a whole skinny on juice video if you want to see that. But just sweetened beverages in general, drinks that are sweetened with sugar. But sweetened beverages are super popular, and nutrition-wise, they really are not a great option, and that is just for one simple reason, that when we are drinking a beverage, we're not sitting down with a meal and a plate and a fork and focusing on food and different textures and different smells. We're mostly just mindlessly sipping on a drink. When you are drinking any kind of beverage, no matter what it is, you're typically not just focusing on drinking that drink. You're on your computer, or you are driving, or you're socializing with friends, or you're working on work, or I mean, you could be doing a million other tasks while sipping on a beverage because you're just sipping on it. So therefore, it is pretty much just automatically kind of like a mindless thing that we're consuming. And along with that, most sweetened beverages, maybe with the exception of like, really high calorie coffee drinks, they're not that high in calories. They're usually just like sugar and liquid, and they're not going to fill us up. We're not going to feel full off of this drink. So not only are we sipping on it mindlessly and we're not necessarily getting all those satiety cues that we would if we were eating a meal or eating something versus drinking something. And the problem with that is it's so easy just to be sipping on these drinks all the time because it's mindless. We're not getting full off of it. We can just toss them back all day and not even really notice how quickly the calories, or more importantly, how quickly all those grams of sugar are adding up. And that's kind of scary. And going off of that, the next thing I really want to focus on is just looking at the amount of sugar that is in soda, or I mean, this could go for any sweetened beverage in general, but in this video, we're talking about soda. So we're talking about a lot of sugar. And again, it's so easy just to toss back those drinks, be sipping on them, and that sugar adds up really quickly. So you may be thinking like, okay, what's the big deal? Sugar isn't everything these days. Does it really matter? Yes, it really does matter. Sugar is kind of a scary substance, nutrient, whatever you want to call it. We are learning so much more about sugar, and there's a lot of research that is getting uncovered, and a lot of it is linking sugar with heart disease, which is really scary because heart disease is the #1 killer in the United States, and guess what is in all of our food? Sugar. It's everywhere. It's hard to get away from. And especially if you are sipping on soda all throughout the day, or even if it's just a couple sodas, I mean, that's a lot of sugar. We will look at some labels a little bit later so you can see just how much sugar I'm talking about, but just know that it's a lot of sugar. Also, some studies are finding that your diet quality overall does not matter. You could be someone who eats a ton of fruits and vegetables and doesn't eat anything that's processed, and you have a really just pristine diet. But if you're also taking in a lot of sugar, for example, you like your soda, your risk for heart disease is exponentially linked with the amount of added sugar you consume. So it doesn't matter if you have a really healthy diet or a really poor, crappy diet, the amount of sugar you consume is going to increase your risk of heart disease. Another big one to think about is diabetes. The rates of diabetes here in the US are ridiculous, and they just continue to go through the roof. And I'm talking about type 2 diabetes, not type 1, that's autoimmune. That's a whole different ball of wax. Has nothing really to do with diet. But type 2 diabetes, on the other hand, is directly linked with diet. So let's just think about this for a second. If you are drinking, let's say a Coke, a 12-ounce Coke has about 40 grams of sugar in it. Yes, 40 grams of sugar. While you're drinking that soda, it is basically just sugar liquid, so it's going to go into your stomach and it's going to pretty much go straight into your bloodstream. And what happens is when those 40 grams of sugar pretty much assimilate straight into your bloodstream, not much is, holding it back or slowing that process down because it's just sugar water, you're gonna get a huge blood sugar spike. And every time you get a blood sugar spike, just like in physics, remember those days, every action has an equal opposite reaction. So you get a blood sugar spike, what's gonna happen? Your blood sugar is going to drop. And it doesn't just drop for the hell of it, it drops because your body is dealing with that blood sugar spike, and what it does is it releases insulin. Insulin is how we get sugar from our blood into our cells. So what we do is we have a vein right here with all the blood sugar in it. Insulin comes in and it basically sucks that sugar into our cell. So what happens when we get this huge blood sugar spike, it just really spikes up, the body is going to go into panic mode and say, we have too much sugar in the blood, I don't like having my blood be this sugary, so therefore I need a lot of insulin and fast to combat this. So you have this big blood sugar spike, and then guess what? You're gonna have a big insulin spike to go along with it, and all of this happens really quickly, and the insulin is gonna be sucking all that sugar into your cells really quickly. Seriously, Rosie? And what's gonna happen next? Your blood sugar is going to drop. And we don't want that. We want steady, happy blood sugar. So when we are sipping on sugary beverages that are pretty much just pure sugar mixed with liquid, guess what's gonna happen? We're gonna get blood sugar spikes. And the real problem with that is if you are doing this to your blood sugar, causing it to spike and drop all the time for years on end, if you are a habitual soda drinker or whatever your sugary vice may be, your body is going to start to build up a resistance to insulin. If your body is constantly secreting all of this insulin to constantly combat all the sugar that you're dumping into your veins, eventually we're gonna get resistant to it. It's a vicious cycle, and we just keep needing more and more insulin to combat those blood sugar spikes. And over time, your pancreas, those beta cells that create your insulin, are gonna start to break down, and then you become an insulin-dependent type 2 diabetic. And that is why people with diabetes, as time goes on, typically, not always, but typically need to have more and more insulin, especially if they don't make any diet and lifestyle modifications. So if you didn't know about diabetes, now you know. And if you are someone who is watching this because you drink soda and you don't have diabetes yet, this is your red flag, this is your wake-up call. Don't put yourself in the position where you actually develop diabetes, because it is a hideous disease. It affects everything. Because think about it, your blood kind of turns syrupy, and when you have syrupy blood that can't move freely through your veins and your arteries and your teeny tiny little capillaries and get oxygen to all of the tiny corners and crevices of your body that needs it, things are going to start to shut down. Your eyes are going to go, your kidneys are going to go, your limbs could fall off, your stomach's not going to work properly. It affects everything. So if you needed a wake-up call to stop guzzling sugar in whatever form that may be, please let this be it. Another thing I wanted to touch on within the sweetened beverage realm, especially with soda, is fructose. So as you will see, most sodas are sweetened with high fructose corn syrup. So when it comes to fructose, I have actually already talked about this in my Skinny on Juice video, but it's very important, so I want to talk about it again here. But fructose is very interesting, and not in a good way. So there's a couple things that I want to mention to you guys when it comes to fructose, and I'm talking about high fructose sweeteners like corn syrup. So fructose itself is naturally occurring. It's not like a man-made or lab-made sweetener or nutrient or anything like that. It is naturally occurring, mainly in fruit. Fruit is actually really high in fructose. But the thing is, high fructose corn syrup is in a lot of food products, soda being probably one of the biggest ones. The reason it's in a lot of these food and beverage products is because A, it's cheaper than table sugar, and also it is more shelf stable. So obviously food manufacturers are going to prefer to use the cheaper or longer lasting sweetener, right? Okay, but the problem is we started flooding our diets with extra fructose, more fructose than our bodies have ever seen before, because we started adding high fructose sweeteners to foods and drinks, namely soda. So the problem with this is a couple potential things. There is some research to suggest that fructose, when we consume it, it actually doesn't trigger the satiety centers in the brain when compared to glucose. So if we had just a glucose sweetened beverage, it triggers all the satiety centers, so it helps us, feel more satisfied or full, and therefore we may not drink as much. But with fructose, since it's not lighting up those satiety centers, it's a lot easier to consume way more because we're not getting those cues to stop drinking it, because we're not getting those satiety cues, if that makes sense. Quick note, just to put this out there, table sugar is a mixture of glucose and fructose. You're not really going to find like a glucose sweetened beverage out there unless it's a product for people with diabetes. So if we're looking at a soda that is sweetened with high fructose corn syrup, it's sweetened with all fructose, versus something that is sweetened with table sugar is going to have, table sugar is actually sucrose, which is glucose and fructose, two molecules put together. So if we're looking at something that is sweetened with table sugar, it's still going to have fructose, but it's not going to have nearly as much because it's cut with a lot of glucose as well, if that makes sense. So we're not necessarily fructose free with, things that are sweetened with sugar, but we're not getting quite as much. Just wanted to put that out there and clear that up. Okay, so doesn't light up the same satiety centers as glucose. We covered that, which is kind of scary. And then also another thing which I think is even more scary is fructose itself is more favorable to be converted into and deposited as fat, and I will tell you why. So in one of the main systems in the body that we create energy from, it's called glycolysis. It's the first of a few different systems that we use in the body to create ATP or energy, which is what we use as our energy source. So in that first system, glycolysis, there's actually a step in which we make fructose. We can actually create fructose in our body. But what can also happen is if we have, excess fructose laying around, that excess exogenous, meaning coming from the diet, we brought it in, we didn't create it, that exogenous fructose can actually just slip into that glycolysis system and start it itself because, hey, there's a fructose molecule, let's go. Why is that a problem? The reason that is potentially problematic, is because where we create the fructose, where we make the fructose in that system, it falls after the rate limiting step. So our body has crazy amounts of checks and balances. It will only create or use up what it needs. So when we need to make energy, when we're low on energy, we're going to fire up that glycolysis and get that whole system going so we can create energy. But if we're just hanging around, sitting on the couch, not really, using up much energy, we're not going to be cranking that system because we just don't need the energy right now. But since that fructose can slip right in after the rate limiting step, meaning even if we don't need to create energy, that fructose can still come in and keep that thing cranking all day, we're going to end up with an excess of energy that we don't necessarily need at that point in time. And when we create energy that we don't need at that point in time, that we're not going to immediately use and burn off, guess what happens to it? It gets stored as fat. So there's a good chance that, all of this extra fructose that's being pumped into our food supply or floating around in that soda we're drinking is going to be made into energy that is unnecessary and therefore is going to be stored as fat. And one last thing I want to say about fructose is this is actually something I came across in my own research for my thesis, and it was just one study and this was not the focus of my thesis, so I didn't go crazy and just try and see if there were a lot of other studies out there, but it was just one study. However, they compared fructose sweetened beverages to glucose sweetened beverages consumption in overweight adolescents, and those who were drinking the glucose sweetened beverages, which we all know is not soda, soda is sweetened with fructose for the most part, they found that those who switched to the glucose beverages had much better biomarkers for, risk of heart disease. For example, they had a decrease in LDL oxidation. LDL is the bad cholesterol and we don't want it to oxidize. There was also a decrease in C-reactive protein, which is basically a fancy measure for seeing how much stress is in the body. So when they switched from fructose, so aka regular soda, to a glucose sweetened beverage, they had less internal stress in the body. And also they had a drop in their plasma free fatty acids, so just the fat that is floating around in their blood. So very interesting. Again, it was one study and I don't know if there's a whole lot more research on that topic specifically, but it's definitely eye-opening. Okay, so that is the whole disease risk component of consuming sugar-sweetened beverages, including soda. But there was another thing I quickly wanted to touch on that is unique to soda, and that is a correlation with risk for low bone density and potentially even osteoporosis. So this is kind of an interesting topic because we don't know exactly what is causing it, but there is a definite link between drinking colas. So that is your dark brown soda. I'm not talking about the clear stuff like Sprite or anything like that. Specifically talking about colas, and a link with lower bone density. Now there's a few different theories why that may be. One theory is that maybe the soda is just displacing other drinks like milk that's high in calcium, or another theory has to do with the high phosphorus content of colas. So if you look at Coke or Pepsi, they have phosphoric acid. So if we're consuming high amounts of phosphorus and a much higher ratio to the amount of calcium we're consuming, it can cause the body to actually leach calcium from our bones and therefore have not as strong bones and have lower bone density. But the jury is still out. We don't know exactly what is causing this correlation, but there definitely is a correlation between consumption of colas and low bone density. Okay, so now that all of that is out of the way, just for fun, we'll just quick breeze through a few of these different sodas and check out their nutrition facts as well as their ingredient lists. So the first one I'm going to look at is good old Coca-Cola, and each one I'm looking at is going to be 12-ounce bottle. So for 12 ounces of Coke, you get 140 calories, 45 milligrams of sodium, so not that much, 39 grams of carb, which is all sugar. There's 39 grams of sugar. Holy crap, that's a lot of sugar. I love using the reference of a Hershey's bar. A normal Hershey's chocolate bar has 24 grams of sugar. So just to kind of put it in perspective, how much sugar is really in that bottle of soda. As far as ingredients for the Coke, first ingredient is carbonated water, and then our friend high fructose corn syrup, caramel color, phosphoric acid, there we go, there's that phosphorus that's in the colas, natural flavors, and caffeine. So we've got high fructose corn syrup, we've got caramel color, which is a color additive, which I don't know if people should really be eating that ever, and also some natural flavors, so all of those are pretty much to be expected, but yeah, not so great. Moving on to good old Pepsi, their rival. So for a 12-ounce bottle, it's 150 calories, so 10 more calories, oh my gosh. 30 milligrams of sodium, which again is barely anything, is a little bit less than the Coke, but it's all pretty marginal, so who really cares? And then there is 41 grams of carb, which is all sugar, 41 grams of sugar. So the Pepsi does have a tiny bit more sugar than the Coke. Again, it's all just a lot of sugar, really either way you slice it, but I don't know, there is a little bit more. And then as far as the ingredients, we have carbonated water, high fructose corn syrup, again, caramel color, yuck, sugar, so, oh, there's some real sugar in this, whoop-de-doo, phosphoric acid, caffeine, citric acid, and natural flavors. So really not all that different, it's pretty much the same ingredients, but they do add some citric acid, which is not that big of a deal, and some real sugar. So again, all to be expected. We've got the high fructose corn syrup and some coloring and some natural flavors again, are the three things that I would focus on the most. Okay, moving on to Mountain Dew now. Does anybody really drink Mountain Dew? I mean, like, obviously people must, because it's still on the shelves, people are clearly buying it, but I don't know, I feel like I only ever see people drink like Coke or Pepsi. I don't know who's drinking Mountain Dew. Anywho, let's see, so for a 12-ounce bottle of Mountain Dew, it's 170 calories, so a little bit higher than the other two. There is 60 milligrams of sodium, so the highest we've seen thus far, still not a whole lot to really write home about. Then there is 46 grams of carb, which is all sugar, 46 grams of sugar. So again, the highest we've seen. Highest in calories, well, it's also the highest in sugar, so that makes sense. Highest in sodium. Now let's take a look at the ingredients. Carbonated water, high fructose corn syrup, no shock there. Concentrated orange juice, okay. Citric acid, natural flavor, sodium benzoate, caffeine, sodium citrate, erythrobic acid, gum arabic, calcium disodium EDTA, brominated vegetable oil. What the hell is that doing in there? And yellow 5. So in this one we also have a color additive. We have yellow 5. We had caramel coloring in the other two, some vegetable oil that's so random. There's also a gum in here, as well as a small handful of like preservatives. So overall, this one by far is the worst so far. I mean, no sodas are really a great choice, but this is definitely the worst of all of the bad choices. Next, we'll take a look at Sprite. For a 12-ounce bottle of Sprite, you get 140 calories, so just around the other ones. 65 milligrams of sodium, so that's actually the highest we've seen thus far. Interesting. 38 grams of carb, and that is all sugar, so 38 grams of sugar. So this is actually the lowest we've seen thus far, however, it's still a lot of sugar. Ingredients are carbonated water, high fructose corn syrup, citric acid, natural flavors, sodium citrate, sodium benzoate. So again, we've got our fructose sweetened water with some citric acid to give it that citrus taste, and natural flavors, as well as a couple of preservatives. This one is clear, so obviously it's not going to have any coloring, so I mean, I guess that's like a benefit, if you want to even call it that. And then lastly, I'm going to take a look at Dr. Pepper. So for a 12-ounce bottle of Dr. Pepper, you get 150 calories, so similar to, to the other ones. So we're all kind of in the same ballpark here. It's 55 milligrams of sodium, so kind of middle of the pack. 40 grams of sugar, which again is kind of middle of the pack there, but still really high. And then as far as ingredients, we've got carbonated water, high fructose corn syrup, caramel color, phosphoric acid, natural and artificial flavors, sodium benzoate, and caffeine. So pretty much same old here. We've got our high fructose sweetened water with a little bit of natural flavor and colors added in, and they also threw in a preservative as well, so not so great. So as for my final thoughts for this video, overall, soda really is offering us nothing when it comes to nutrition. The only thing it is giving us is negative consequences, pretty much. People obviously do really like the taste and the fizziness, and you know, that I guess can be seen as a benefit, but the cons of drinking soda way outweigh that one little pro, at least in my eyes. So if you are someone who is drinking soda, I would highly encourage you to try and just cut it out of your life as much as possible. Every once in a while, you know, really not that big of a deal, but if this is something that you are consuming on a regular basis, I would really look at this if I were you. And you know, maybe it's not possible for you to completely cut it out. Maybe that is just a ridiculous notion. But if you can at least cut it down, and so maybe at least cut it down by half, I mean, you're reducing all of those negative side effects by half. I mean, that's better than nothing. So anything that you can possibly do to reduce your soda consumption is going to be so good for you and your body in the long run. Do yourself a favor and just try your best to either cut it down or completely cut it out. And you never know, once you maybe cut it down a little bit, you may realize that cutting it out may not be the worst thing in the world, or maybe all that difficult. But that is all I have for this video, guys. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you found this helpful and that you were able to learn from it. And if you have yet to see any of my other skinny videos, I will go ahead and link that up above. You should definitely check them out. I have done skinnies on lots and lots of food products, so you should definitely go watch those, and hopefully you can learn from them as well. If you have yet to subscribe, I would love it if you would subscribe so you can join my little community here on YouTube. I would love to have you. And of course, if you have yet to follow me on Instagram and Snapchat, I would love to be friends with you on there as well. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. Thank you so much for your constant support on my channel. It seriously means the world. And I can't wait to see you guys in the next video. Bye!
Can you see I